Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we are on this show every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 Eastern Time, which right now we are in Las Vegas, so it's 11 o'clock our time. But anyway, the call-in number is 646-200-4169. That's 646-200-4169. Or you can enter the chat room and ask questions there. And here's Dr. Michael Ryce.
Welcome to MindShifters Radio. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to share this space with you, whoever is on the line with us, whether you're in the chat room or on the phone. And you can phone in and listen to the show, ask questions, and, of course, ask questions in the chat room. We would love to have some questions about the forgiveness process and your experience of it, or your comments and questions about it. And I have a question to start out with today. And the question that I have in mind today is, have you ever spent any time in your life struggling to live up to the ideal, what was seen or spoken about as, oh, man, this is the way we need to live, this is it, this is what we need to do, maybe put forward to you by someone else, and usually someone else who couldn't live up to it either, or maybe just something that you took on to yourself. And if you've done that, then we've got some answers for you. Because, of course, we've all looked at the ideal and said, wouldn't it be nice? But how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you get there? And our show is about how to get there. Our show is about how to remove those things that never belonged in a human mind, that we say are behaviors we don't want to do, and how to integrate the behaviors that we would like to do. And recognizing that those behaviors are not something that you initiate because you saw it somewhere else, but as you do the real work of healing, you initiate from being those behaviors in your own original, totally new way, not copying what anybody else did, not saying nice words, not being nice, not being kind, not doing the right things, but rather being a human being. And all of those things that were called right and nice and kind will naturally flow. It won't be something we need to effort. It won't be something that we need to make up. And if we find ourselves in a space where something less than that space of being exists, that space of a human life, which is love, then we're restored to that estate by doing the work that we're talking about in our show here. So if you would like to access our main tool, and that is the tool of forgiveness, ancient Aramaic idea of not about letting other people off the hook, but about changing what's going on inside of you, you can go to our website, which is www.whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. Click on that link. And then the first two links, one is an explanation of the worksheet process, and the second link is a copy of the latest 7-step reality management sheet. We invite you to get those tools and to begin to use them, and we'd love to hear your experience, your questions, or your thoughts about the use of those tools. Not always an easy thing to do because, of course, to do that, we have to look inside ourselves. We have to deal with what's there. But as we look inside and we deal with what's there, awesome things start to happen. We had a young lady, we were at a medical center out in Pahrump, Nevada today, and we had a young lady who came to us last week, and Jeanie and I worked with her a little bit, and she was in such trauma over family situations that she was ready for something stronger than Prozac. And yesterday, after she had done one Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, a 2.5-hour one we did here last Thursday at the medical center, and then this weekend she participated in the mini intensive that we did. Yesterday she bounced in the office in the morning as excited as the young lady that she was, and as excited as a young lady at, I think she's 21 now, would be in their natural state, sharing how she had done a reality management worksheet with her father last night, a father who she was terrified of, and he got it. He worked through an issue, understood it. She said 5 minutes later he was upset again, but he got the understanding, and she's planted the seed. And as she was planting the seed, she had two younger brothers who've been a challenge in their family. And the two younger brothers were so excited listening to her guide Dad through the worksheet that her two younger brothers were, well, we want to do one of those too. And then an estranged mother who had left the family for another relationship and left everybody in quite a bit of trauma. And it's been almost 10 years and hasn't had a decent conversation in 10 years, was able to call her mother and have a loving, supportive, respectful conversation for which mother thanked her profusely and said, I want to learn what you know. So it's kind of fun to watch things unfold as people use the tools. And then last night at the end of the day, we were here at the office all day yesterday, and we're being sponsored by Dr. Stephen Andraki at Health Partners in Pahrump, Nevada. This young lady clocked out. Her day was over, and there was a patient that came in that needed some support. So she just, in such aliveness, bounced into the room and did a worksheet with this patient, totally off the clock, totally because she says, I love worksheets. And so it's pretty cool to watch something like that happen, that kind of shift. A young lady who's ready for, almost ready for the loony bin. And 4 days, well, let's see, from last Thursday, Wednesday to yesterday. So yesterday was Monday. What's that? 5 days. Awesome change. And that's what's possible. So that's what we're here to support. And, Jeanie, do we have any callers or anything? Nothing in the chat room? Well, then let's hear from David. For those who don't know David, although probably everybody does, David is the David?
I'm doing fabulous, Michael. This is an absolutely gorgeous day today. Still a little cool out here in Heartland, and I understand that the weather all throughout the country is kind of shifting. Spring is sprung, so the expression is. But I'm doing really wonderful, and listening to you talk about what our purpose is and our support is and what the radio show is about. And being mind shifters, it's about shifting the way that the mind is showing things in my world. And as you talked about, the most important thing to begin anywhere is to tap into the true essence of who it is that we are. Without looking and addressing that, then I think a person just stays trapped in their mind all the time, and that the mind can never show them their true nature, that it is a process of letting go of anything that is unlike our true nature in order to get back and recognize that. And once experiencing that, words can't experience anything. They can just open up the space for that to happen. And by having a personal experience of our true essence, who it is that we are, just opens up that whole window for living. And it sounds like that you've witnessed that with several people that got into and learned how to use this tool. Not only just learned how to use it, I think that there's this belief that goes on that if I could, as the dissociated mind would say, if I could just figure it out, if you just tell me what it is that I have to do or I need to do, again, that's just information coming from the dissociated mind. It's really just a question of putting it into practice. And when the most difficult time to put it into practice is when the stuff is up. And so my recommendation is to do the worksheets and to use the tools daily, consistently, so that when the major things come up, and you've mentioned this and talked about it, once we're in the thick of it, it's kind of difficult to tap into, wow, everything is okay, I'm all right. And until that relationship is built with the connection of our true essence, so that we come from our highest guidance, then there's the challenge. And this radio show, and we're here to support people in doing that. And by experiencing that, I could hear in my projection of of how it is that you were feeling, Michael, after witnessing and seeing these shifts that people have made over the last several days, is that it's a wonderful experience that also gets to then reinforce it within yourself of why it is that you do the work you do. And I'm very grateful that you've created the space for me to be able to do that. I'm at one of those places now about just tapping into. It's so interesting that when I'm in that space, then I get to experience, not just see it. It just resonates. Everything that goes on resonates with it. So that's why I'm at today, and would love to hear from some folks and see how things are going for them. There may be some callers that are people in the chat room that have called in or asked questions before, and I'm curious to see if there's anyone out there that has, maybe for the first few times, used any of the tools, and what kind of response and what have they noticed from that. So that's where I'm at today.
Great, and that's David Hayes, who's the center manager at Heartland, and is out there. We're on the road running around the globe. David is there overseeing the property, and along with Terry. Is Terry with us today?
Yeah, Terry is. He's busy doing some work on the property, but I don't know if he's available or not.
Okay, well, I was just wondering if he was there. I was just going to say hello if he was, and if he's not, that's cool. The other piece that I had to share was that Dr. Andraki was sharing with me about a patient who came in yesterday with her son, and when they were in about 10 days ago, the son was in a fit of tears continuously, the son being about 3 years of age, and the mother in shambles. And he said, well, I can give you a pill, but that's not going to change any of this. Here's what will change it, and handed her a copy of the book of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And she started to read it, and she was in the process of divorcing her husband. She called him 5 days ago, I believe it was, and shared that she and her husband were back together as a result of her reading and sharing some of the work with her husband, and that what they were doing each night was she was reading the book to him, and their marriage was back in aliveness and excitement. And when she came in with a smile on her face instead of being in such depression that it seemed like life was hopeless. And instead of a crying, raging child, she had a sweet young boy that was just there and playful and happy and in delight. And so they're the kind of results one gets if one chooses to put the pen to the paper and go to work, and we invite you to do that. And, of course, the worksheet that we're talking about is the reality management that we spoke of that's on the website. And as David was talking, that instruction, so many people will say, well, just tell me what to do. And you can't tell anybody to do a behavior that will fix anything. However, you can use words to describe a set of tools. And if one will use the tools, the shift and the change that we're talking about will take place. And that's what we're looking to support you in. You who are in the chat room, you who are on the phone, if you have a question, a comment, a thought, we would love to hear from you. And, of course, the work that's involved, there's not something that it's not a process that happens overnight. It is a process that takes some effort. It is a process that takes some discipline. And as you apply that discipline, you find yourself moving into deeper and deeper spaces of the direct experience of your human life, which is love. And you stop looking for love in all the wrong places. You stop looking for it out there, and you realize that what you're looking for is what is looking. And as you dissolve through forgiveness what isn't what you are, you come to a different experience of life. And we're looking to support that different experience of life through the use of the tools. In the ancient teachings, they talked about it as coming out of Egypt, coming out of the desert, waking up to who we are, and doing the inner work. Many people are excited about the inner work. They admire those who've done it. But if you haven't experienced the result, if you haven't experienced the absolute presence of love in your physiology and expressed out of that, then there's work to be done. And that's the idea of our process in why is this happening to me again and all the corollary tools. And, of course, you need to put your hand to the plow. You need to be willing to do the work in order to get the shift. The old saying, you got to use a hoe if you want potatoes.
Well, Michael, when you make that statement, that is so true, that we have to be willing. And I like how you express it when you talk about that we will be doing our work, whether we choose to do it or whether it's not necessarily forced on us. And I'm thinking about Jill Bolton Taylor and the experience that she had about having the stroke and being conscious of her stroke and the insights that she received from that event in her life. And if anyone wants to watch that, then you can go to our website, and I think that there is a link in order to do that. And it really explains just exactly how how the universe gives us the opportunity to look at and to explore what it is that goes on. And I remember watching, I think it's a very powerful video. And when I watched that and I saw her and listened to how much, and listened to what she went through and the closeness of her leaving this body, well, she actually did leave the body. Then after she recovered from the surgery, then she had 8 years that it took her in order to get back to the space of her true essence. So even with having, it's kind of like people having the near-life experiences that's referred to as near-death experiences. Damian Brinkley, with having 3 of those, that to have those experiences, it's to me, it's the signal that, I need to be waking up. I was talking with a friend of mine that I was in Vietnam with, and we're pretty much the same age, been around on the planet about the same time. And when I look at what he is experiencing in a physical way with, he's just had triple bypass surgery last September. He had a heart attack when he was 40 years old. That's 20-some-odd years ago. He had prostate cancer about 3 years ago. He's had all of this anxiety, quote, and stuff coming up for him. He's been retired for 20-some-odd years. He's financially he's in really great shape. And I look at, everyone at some point, sometime, that they'll have to address what it is and get in touch with who it is that they are. And I think that he's at a place right now that he's willing to look at things a little bit differently. So when you talk about, the willingness, at some point, at some time, everyone will be doing their work. It's just a matter of, as you expressed about Jill Bolton Taylor, it isn't necessary to have a stroke in order to wake up, in order to make the turn. And oftentimes, people get to a place that, is it possible to make the turn? Yes. And it doesn't get any easier later. It just gets later. And the later that it gets, the more difficult that it gets. So if someone out there in the chat room has a thought about that, or on the line, and if you want to give some comments on that, Mike, I'd love to listen to.
Well, if we go back, thousands of years ago, you hear some of the prophets who call for something very simple, and that is a return to trust and belief and love, a return to our true being. And people who hear those words long for that return, but in the old language, they're in captivity. They're enamored with the belief in war, violence, guilt, shame, fear, and those things are the true captivity. I forget which one of the founding fathers it was that said that the person who's got the most difficult job is the person who is in a prison and doesn't know they're in one. And if we're in captivity to behaviors based on fear, violence, guilt, if we buy the rationalizations for the violence that are done, whether they're verbal, emotional, physical, or war, then and we proclaim belief in love, but we go out and support war, we're in trouble. We're just simply in trouble because we're trapped in those generations. And it's those generations, the shackles from the generational realities that need to be thrown off, that need to be removed. And it's not just a matter of speaking the words about it. You can go back, way back, and Isaiah said, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So while people speak words about love, when the stress is up and the chips are down, what do? And, of course, it's always easier to see somebody else when the stress is up and the chips are down and what they need to do. But there's an interesting dynamic that happens in the human mind, and actually Dr. Tim is in the chat room, and he just made a suggestion. We talk about the codependence worksheet a little bit. And if you want to download that worksheet, you can find it on the same place on our site as the download worksheets button. But the essence of the codependence worksheet is that you look at, in the situations where you have upset towards someone else, what your advice is to them. And this trickster of a mind takes the content of our mind, puts it into our brain's image of others, and then gives advice to others as though it was they who needed to follow the advice. And there's an interesting little trick that happens in that worksheet, because the last column in the worksheet, which if you download it, it's blank. That last column, the title for that column is How I'm Going to Follow My Advice to Them in My Life. Earlier in the worksheet, you've laid out the upset you hold towards someone else and what your advice is to them. And what we point out in that workshop, or the DVD, if you want to gather the information from that whole workshop on codependence to interdependence, the dissociated mind, when we deny something in ourselves, that dissociated mind builds pictures out of its content of others. And so others show up in our mind with our problem attached, which that thought always leads me to one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines in the workshop, and that is, if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? Obviously, if the truth were they were the one with the problem, they would be the one with the pain. So as I look at someone else insisting that they're the problem in my life and I'm in pain, who's really got the problem? And once you start to recognize that and you look at the advice you have for them, you will find you're giving advice to your own dissociated mind. And when you start to follow your advice, you'll find that you're a genius, an absolute genius at giving advice. However, most people sit around and give advice to everybody else and take a little of it themselves. You can go back 2,000 years ago in those ancient scriptures. Again, this whole process was no different then than it is now. And you hear the man named Yeshua saying to the priests of the day, you load people up with these burdens, but you don't put a finger to it yourself. You won't do the work. And so all these rituals have been set up to keep people busy and paying support, where the real work was left undone. And we talked about straining at a gnat while swallowing a camel and leaving the weightier parts of the process, that is love, out of the equation. And as we get caught in rituals and we get caught in all kinds of external things, we're going to keep all the things in the world nicey nice, and we're going to do all the right things. None of that captures being. What captures being is doing the work. And as you do the work, as you put your hand to the plow, of course there's crazy glue on the handle. Once you start to understand, you got to carry forward with it. But as you begin to understand and you begin to do the work, then you experience the result of the active presence of love in your mind, in your relationships, in your life. And that is the transformer. That's what changes absolutely everything. And if you look back, I like the way Isaiah put it together, because there's not this big dogmatic journey and theology and all this, rules and regulations and doctrine. You go back and you look at it at Isaiah, and again, this is just life. This isn't about theology. Men made it about theology to create rituals to stay out of the real work. And he basically says, go for love. Go for truth. That's it. That's simple. And if you do it, everything will change. And what he says on a practical note, that we could resolve the dilemma of the rejection of love if we were to actually come back to an experience. Here's a quote. Here's what he says. There would be the removal of national hatred, the overcoming of sorrow and of death. And people still go off and sacrifice their children on the altar of war and violence, with their banners held high and their heroes held high, and the refusal to just listen to those simple words. Wow. If we would return to love, there'd be the removal of national hatred, the overcoming of sorrow and of death. That's a pretty awesome promise. And, of course, if you lose that one in doctrine, you can, get into, well, did I genuflect the right way? Did I count the right number of angels that could dance on the head of a pin? But the real work is just real simple. Are we living a human life or aren't we? So I would love to hear from somebody who has a question. I hope that the people who are listening to this show on the phone or on the website are actually doing the worksheet process. And I would love to hear from someone who's actually doing the work and has a question, has a thought. There are some challenging steps in the forgiveness process and the integration of the work. And we'd love to support you with how-to questions. And if anyone has any thoughts in that direction, I'd love to hear from you. This is not just an intellectual journey. We're not here to just talk about fun, intellectual, isn't that interesting kind of stuff. We're here to hopefully inspire you to do the work. As you do the work, things change. And as we abandon fear and hostility as ways of living and live in the delight of a human life, and if you have any question about what the delight of a human life is, just go out and hold a newborn. You'll know exactly what it is. And men tend to be in such deep captivity, and I'm talking about, of course, our species, not just males, but especially the violence end of it, males. Although it's interesting, if you look at the domestic violence statistics and child abuse, the statistics for that abuse with women is much higher than men. And so we all are in the same boat there. But if we are in captivity to war and violence, whether it's personal war, whether it's national war, doesn't matter, whether it's verbal violence, emotional violence, or physical violence, the idea is to move beyond that. The idea is to be willing to forgive those energies in us which hold us in that captivity, in that type of behavior. You go back and you can look at a fellow named Paul, and Paul says, after doing this beautiful writing on love, why is it the things I would do, obviously love, I cannot do, and the things I hate are what I do? He didn't understand. Yeshua understood. We've decoded from his Aramaic teachings exactly how to make that shift, how to move out of that hostility or fear and back to love. And we would love to support you in going there. And Jeanie has a question for us.
Dr. Tim's on the line.
Oh, Dr. Tim. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I just
How do you
thought, I'm fine, thank you. I just thought I would add to what you were saying. When I started working with the Codependence to Interdependence worksheet, I soon realized that even though I'm a psychologist and I'm in sessions, if I phrase something in my sessions to a client or a patient as advice, it's still exactly what I need to do someplace in my life.
Yep. we teach best that which we most need to learn, right?
Right. Even if it's valuable for them, even if I'm doing my job and I'm staying tuned into what they need in the moment, it will be very useful for them, but it's also exactly what I need to do in my life. And keeping a part of myself observing everything I say all day is a really important part of my work in this process of trying to keep love conscious, active, and present.
Yeah.
And having that specific filter about watching for advice. If I phrase something as advice to somebody else, you can bet your last dollar I need to do that somewhere in my life. And one of the times about 8 months ago that came up, I found myself telling somebody that they needed to really craft some time to schedule with their partner to plan making alone time, just talk about the relationship to really, and as I was saying it, I went, oh, uh-huh. I wonder which of my personal relationships needs this. And of course, that was just another filter because they all need that. I needed to do it with my sons. I needed to do it with Christy. I needed to do it with my mom. So it's a fabulous tool, just that one little filter adopted from your codependence to interdependence worksheet. And I try to remind myself of that on a daily basis.
Yeah, I join you in that, in the remembering of it. I know I love Richard Bach's book, The Illusions. Jeanie was actually just doing a school paper the other day, and I had picked up the book. She had done some quotes from it in her schoolwork, and I picked up the book again, seeing as how she got it to read it again. It had been several years since I read it. It's just such an awesome little book. And Jeanie, so where does that quote come from? We teach best that which we most need to learn. I said, well, just a minute. Let me go back 3 pages, and that's one of Richard Bach's thoughts in Illusions. Awesome piece of work. That's what we do. And, that captivity to violence, to insanity, to even the little hostilities, the little fears that create the little deaths. Those hostilities and fears never work. But somehow, I think it's because we've got this multi-generational database that we're each working through, that in that database there's more appeal to the hostility and fear than there is the appeal that truth and love have. And so that seems almost inconceivable, especially once you say it to yourself, okay, I got it, love and truth, that's what I want. And of course, that's what I want until the next time somebody gives me the look, and the rest of it's my non-being mind, and then I'm back in the old game. And the process is, as you say, it takes constant vigilance to be able to clean up every little nuance of everything that holds us out of love, and to return to that state of being. And sadly, many people look at someone who has made that return and they go, wow, that's awesome. Let's sit around and watch them do it. Instead of, oh, that's what I need to be about. That's what I need to experience. And so admiring it and leaving the work undone doesn't cut it. And we have work to do, each and every one of us. It's a constant, continuous work, and that's one of the reasons why we're appreciative of being able to do the show every day, that, of course, we get to keep reminding ourselves, and we're here to support everybody on the planet. So anybody on the planet that wants to tap into this radio show, and, of course, everybody who's listening, we would appreciate your support in letting others know about the show, and tapping them into the website, www.whyagain.com, and letting them share the tools and the support. And, of course, as long as we still hold admiration for war, for violence in some kind that lies within us, the mind will always hallucinate an enemy that deserves it. No question about it. There will always be somebody that will say, yes, well, now there's somebody who really deserves the violence, whether it's somebody who has different political opinions, someone who has different religious views, someone who has different views on any topic you can think of. The mind will take its internalized violence and put it on them. But, of course, one who does violence has little recognition that it's their own cellular structure they're doing the violence to first. And that's why we say, ouch, that's why we hurt, that's why we rage. And as we do the work, the hurt, the rage, the captivity to violence starts to dissipate and disappear, and we have this awesome ability to experience the presence of love. So any other thoughts in that regard, Tim, David?
Well, it always comes back. It's like Tim was talking about. In tool that I've used, and actually with every real true program, and I call it true program, whenever that someone's reflecting it back for me to take a look and see what it is that comes up for me, the simplest thing is that if I'm feeling anything unlike love, and that doesn't have to be rage, that doesn't have to be hatred. It can be sadness. It can be disappointment, frustration, any of those things. And I think that at least this is my experience with most people, is that they kind of think about, well, it's not really that bad. It's just, it's okay. That's just the way that life is. And then it usually gets to the place to where that the stress is just too much there. The analogy that you used with the spring of, keeping it pushed down to keeping it locked in, and to push it down and push it down and push it down, and then all of a sudden to explode with it. A perfect example of that was my friend that I was telling you that I was in Vietnam with. Then, now this has been over 40 years ago, and he was when he was in the hospital with this triple bypass, then he actually went after one of the staff people there, and he really, really thought that he was back in Vietnam. He thought he was in a village, and not knowing that. Just literally, and he said, later he says, man, he says, I apologized to the person and everything. He said, but David, he said, I'm telling you, I thought I was there. He said, I thought I was in the village. And I've been talking with him since 1984, since 1986, about doing this particular work, taking a look at this, what's referred to as PTSD, for anyone that has those energies that are locked in. It's much simpler to take the smaller ones and to acknowledge them as they surface on a daily basis, and let go of those. When you talk about doing this worksheet, and I've asked folks that are listening in, and I'm not sure how many people are grasping this. We talk about people building the brain cells to doing 5 worksheets a day for the next 40 days, and I've really shifted with inviting the audience to do that. I'm inviting them to do 1 worksheet. Just do 1 worksheet for the next week, just to see, and just do it today. Just do the 1, because I think that there's so much that people are concerned about. How is it that you talk about how if I ever really lost it, if I ever really did express what it is that's going on with me, I'd kill somebody. Well,
David?
Yep.
Before we get too far away from the thought you spoke about your friend who said was back and really thought he was back in the village. He was back in the village. In his mind, he was back in the village. And, whenever, a good thing to understand is whenever carbon-based memory, whenever the body-mind unit is serving up hostility or fear, we're all back in the village. We're all back in the dissociated state, in the hallucination from those brain cells that we've not resolved the content of yet and not forgiven. And the simple signal that tells anybody that they're back in the village, whether it's that's just the extreme case where, he has what is called a flashback. It isn't a flashback. It's a reality. It's a reality stored in brain cells that, when triggered, comes up, fills the 9-bit mind, and has us believe that the current circumstances, and it will take whatever that content is and project it into the current circumstances as though it's real. And I don't care if it's a 3-year-old's flashback. Here's somebody that, with mom or dad had a beating, and here they are 30 years later in a marriage. They're supposedly adult. They're supposedly mature. They've got kids. They've got a home. They've got a good job. And their partner happens to look at them the wrong way, or maybe the right way, to fire those brain cells. And all of a sudden, that partner goes off. They're back in the village. They're back in the 3-year-old mind where they're about to be beaten, and they respond as so. Anytime somebody has any form of hostility or fear, that's exactly where they are. And it's time for us to start to recognize that every time there's hostility or fear coming from the mind, it obliterates our human lives, and it takes us back into the content of brain cells. It's like the hostility and fear is a marker for this is a decayed energy. This is something from the past that is not real, though it is your reality. And we'll organize the circumstances in our minds so that it looks like what happened 20, 30, 40 years ago or 10 generations ago will be projected into the circumstance of the moment, and it will look like it's real right now. And there's, to me, one of the...
And it will feel like it's real right now.
Hostility and fear. That's exactly it. But that hostility or fear is the marker that, I'm back in the village. I have work to do. This is where my forgiveness is. I could be living in truth instead. And that's our invitation, is that people could be living in truth instead of repeating that back in the village experience. And, if you go back to the man named Yeshua, when he spoke about these things, he said, there's so many things I would say to you, but you can't hear them yet. And he's, he attempted to develop a language to teach others to make the journey that he made. And as you said earlier, you made the reference earlier, David, that words are not the experience. The words are not the journey. They describe the journey, but they're not the work, and they're not the journey. And the attempt or the work of the return to being presented to those who live in non-being is a difficult work to understand at first. But as you begin to do it, and that's a great idea, David, that invitation to do one worksheet, and as you start to collapse, as you get the experience of collapsing the realities that come from long, long ago and come into a present moment experience, it's absolutely awesome. Jeanie has.
Well, my computer crashed, so it'll take me a minute to get back up into the chat room, but before it went down, I had received an email from a young lady who attended every workshop that we did while we were in Florida. It didn't matter where we were. She traveled, and she was there. She attended the mini intensives we did, and she really was seeing a change in her life. At one of the very first workshops that she came to, Michael had put out for everybody to consider the challenge of doing 5 worksheets a day for 40 days, and she took up that challenge. And in her email that she just sent was that, one, she also did a lot of our Spanish translation that we've got on our website, and we want to thank her for that. But she said that she got the job. She had applied for a position. It's a Latin TV program, and so she got that job. So she's seen that shift. She has seen shifts in her relationship. She had been actually selling herself a little bit short in several areas of her life, and she realized that she was changing her own vibrations, so things were changing. And so she's made a lot of different shifts. But one of the things that she said in the email was that she had made the commitment and had really gone forward doing her work. There were 3 friends that had come with her to most of the workshops, and that they were doing a little bit of their work, and that what was obvious to her, maybe not to them, was that the changes she was seeing in her life were comparative to the work that she was investing. and that the other people were not investing their time or their efforts to make a lot of change. So they were seeing little changes but not big changes. And so I think that puts a lot forward, too, that, you know, we've got to do our own work. And congratulations to Nene.
Absolutely. That's just fabulous to hear. And Nene has really supported us with a Spanish translation. Actually, Jeanie's getting ready to start a separate Spanish section on the website because we're doing more and more of that. We had that experience in Florida with several folks that were from the Spanish community, and now we're out here in Las Vegas. And actually tomorrow night we're going to be in Las Vegas working at a medical center there called Guadalupe, and we're going to be working with medical assistants in Spanish. Well, actually, I won't be working in Spanish. I wish I were skilled enough to work in Spanish, but we'll be presenting some ideas in through a Spanish translator and setting up a separate section on the website for the Spanish translation worksheets, the commitment, the children's Who Am I, all of the tools will be moving forward in the Spanish world. And actually, there's another fellow in South Florida, and I don't know whether Salvador might be on the show today or not. He was on a couple of times last week, but I got a text from him this morning, and he has his 2 children and his former wife in Mexico who today are starting to do worksheets together. And so it's pretty awesome to watch how it unfolds. And though sometimes the listening can be dim at first, you know, if our normal state is the non-being, the hostility, the fear, it can be difficult to hear the language and to hear the words of actual liberty. But if you're in a space where you're going, well, I don't even know if that's possible. It is possible. It is absolutely possible. We see it every day, day in and day out. You have to put pen to paper, and David's invitation is an awesome one. 1 worksheet a day. Tim, how's your experience been when you see people who say, okay, I'm going to do 1 or I'm going to do 5 worksheets a day? What do you see happening with the support group you're working there with in Chicago, Tim?
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Well, we have a fairly steady stream of testimonials. When people start doing the worksheet process, they come in and report things like after having been thrown through a family crisis where one family member has a lifelong problem with alcohol and drugs and then has to have heart surgery. And the member of our group had been doing worksheets for about 4 months and then got thrown into this crisis with this being surrounded by family that's still actively drinking and smoking and all of the old drama. And she came in just glowing with a report of how she was able to be there for her sister who was having this open heart surgery and be surrounded by all of her family who are still stuck in their different patterns of drug and alcohol problems and be a completely different presence and then take a lot less damage upon herself. So that was one of the most dramatic testimonials we've had recently, that by the application of worksheets and leaving the family situation to go do a worksheet or do some EFT tapping and then going back into the situation, she came back with a glowing report and proud of herself for having weathered the storm and not having to run away from her sister so she could be there to support her sister emotionally through this medical crisis and still maintain what she felt was her own sense of sanity and love.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? This young lady that I was telling you about earlier in the show, who last Thursday was ready for something more serious than Prozac, was able to speak to her mother, and it's I guess been a 10-year, very rocky relationship. This young lady was around 10 when her mother left with another man, and her father was devastated, and the 2 brothers at home, the family was just in a shambles. And had not been able to have a decent word, and was able to call her mom and be the space of love in the conversation. And it's just, I mean, in a week, this is a young lady who'd never heard such a thought before in her life. And all of a sudden, you know, it's just a major turnout. It's just awesome to watch. And if you're listening and you find yourself in any of those circumstances, please pick up the tools. Please put them to work. And if you have questions, let us support you in that. And Jeanie has a question.
Lady Jane.
Oh, Lady Jane. How are you, St. Jane?
I'm fine, Michael.
You were on my mind yesterday very strongly, but it was about 8 o'clock, and I figured you probably wouldn't appreciate a call at 11 o'clock last night, seeing as how
I don't mind. I wouldn't have minded. If I was on your mind, you were at a Unity church yesterday?
No. Actually, we were here at a medical center in Pahrump yesterday.
Okay.
And we'll be at the Unity Center in Las Vegas. Yeah, we should talk about that. Actually,
yeah,
Thursday
I want to send you some money.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
So where to send it, and it's ready to go, and I'm going, okay. So have Jeanie or you send me that address, please.
We will email you the address where we'll be staying in Las Vegas. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now, one of the reasons I'm calling, I have a question. You want questions?
Yes.
I have a small group that meets every Thursday, and it's about core issues. And one of the ladies, who I've been a friend with for years, has worked at a job for 9 years and never got a raise because she won't ask for it. She did one time, and they just ignored her. So it came out in the group that everybody had a problem except one person learning to say no. So they become a victim, or they give their power away or something. So it's interesting that 5 of them had that. So in using a worksheet, which I thought would be very powerful, how would you set that up as describing it? In other words, what would they write down in order to come to a conclusion as why they can't say no? Do you have any idea about that? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
I believe I am. Let me see if I do. If I were in a situation where Harry comes to me with a question and I feel like I just have to do what Harry says, then Harry would be the topic of my worksheet. Number 1A would be Harry. Actually, I could do several different variations. I could do a worksheet on Harry. I could do a worksheet on myself. I could do a worksheet on saying no. I could do a worksheet on fear.
Okay.
They'd be some the variations of the 77 times 70 worksheet. So I might put Harry in number 1A, and the situation is Harry keeps asking me to do something I don't want to do. How do I feel? I feel fear of saying no. What's my thought? If I say no, Harry will hate me. Then I'll skip down to the step where I look at the goal I have for Harry. I want Harry to approve of and support me. And then the core of the forgiveness process is to cancel that goal. So I cancel my need for Harry to support me and care for me, to love me. And I ask Ruka to go into the part of my mind that holds issues around being supported and cared for and let those loose. So that would be what that worksheet would look like, and then whatever comes up. And it might be that, that of being, a 2 or 3-year-old child and having mom being raged at because she said no, and watching that and going, oh, boy, you never say no, that's for sure, especially to, people like that.
Yes.
And so that would open the space for that dissociated part of the mind to be cleaned out.
Good. Well, I'm going to have them do that because I thought it was most unusual that I didn't recognize some, out of a whole group that they would have a problem saying no, and that the woman can get a raise after 9 years. Come on,
Yep.
Anyway, it's interesting when you're working with people. And I want to comment on what Dr. Tim said, that oftentimes I'll hear myself say something and intuitively know it's about me.
Right.
Feeling is I need to work on that or need to look at that. That's what's nice with working with people. They're a mirror to me. Even you're a mirror to me.
Everybody's an awesome gift, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And I thank you very much for being a gift to me and Jeanie and the whole group.
Delighted to be on your team and delighted to have you on ours. I might also add a mind shifter, another tool that could be used in that one. A good mind shifter around saying no is a real simple one, is love survives when people tell me no.
Very good.
Or I am still completely loved when I say no. And then, for those who might not be familiar with the Mind Shifters tool, what you do is you take a piece of paper and you divide it in two, and you write that thought,
right,
love when people tell me no, and or love survives when I tell people no, whichever the variation is. And then as you write that, you then write everything in your mind that comes up. Well, what are you talking about? If I say no, people withdraw and they'll hate me. And love survives when I tell people no. Well, that's crazy. I've never had that experience. If you don't please people, you'll just be destroyed. Love survives. And so you keep writing everything that comes up in your mind, and there's your whole list of worksheets that you need to do around no.
We can do that too.
Yes, yeah. So it'd just be another tool to assist in working through and walking through that kind of an issue.
All right. Well, thank you much.
Good. And Jeanie says she emailed you the address where we'll be in Las Vegas. And
good, because I just the post office after this talk, so it's on its way.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and we appreciate you a lot. I appreciate the ongoing support that we get from you. It helps to fund and keep us moving around the globe and taking the tools everywhere we move. So thank you.
Good. Okay.
Are you there, Michael? Hello, hello. I'm not hearing you on there, Michael. In case you can hear me, we have about 4 minutes left. Are you there?
I don't hear him either, David.
Okay. Well, we have about 4 minutes left, so for the folks that may be curious about these tools that Michael's referring to, you can go to the website, www.whyagain, and download the book, the worksheets, and the other tools complimentary of Michael and Jeanie, and just begin working with them. The first step is the toughest one, as the expression goes, and everything begins with just taking that first step. So we invite you to do that, and if you have any questions or thoughts about it, there is a guide that's on the website in order for you to do that. And if you would like to email us, send us your questions, and we can possibly address them on the air whenever that we've received them. And you can go into the chat room. That's really where it all begins, is that first step. What are you going to do? And nothing's going to change until we take some different steps. Insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over and expect to get different results. Is that your doggone, Michael?
Yeah, my phone just cut out here. I don't know why, but I would like to make an announcement that if you're in the Pahrump, Nevada area or Las Vegas, this Thursday we will be at the Senior Center in Pahrump doing the workshop, Why Is This Happening to Me? Again, it'll be a free open workshop, 7 till 9:30 in the evening. And then beginning on Sunday, we'll be doing a 5-day series of workshops at Unity of the Valley in Las Vegas. It's actually down near the airport, right near the Henderson Las Vegas line. We'll start on Sunday morning with their 10 o'clock service, and then at 1 o'clock we'll begin Why Is This Happening to Me again from 1 to 4:30. And then Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, we'll be doing a series of workshops. Jeanie, do you remember the titles of the workshops we're doing at Unity? She's just opening the flyer. I know that Friday night we're doing Laws of Living, and I believe it's Wednesday night we're doing Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. We'll be doing Empowered to Heal. Well, we can't get there. We've just got a minute or so left, so jump on the website, www.whyagain.com, and you can download the Reality Management Worksheet. You can look under schedules to see our schedule, and this work is here. We are here to support you as we are supporting ourselves in getting ready for the best year yet of your eternal life. We're here to share the tools. We're here to support. Go ahead, Tim.
I just want to chime in and say if anybody has questions about what it takes to start a support group, on your website you've got a link and support group info. If they go there and then check out locations in Illinois, there's my contact information. I'd be happy to help anybody who has questions about setting one up or the benefits.
Awesome. Well, everybody, have the best year yet of your eternal life, and we'll look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. Bring a friend with you tomorrow. Let somebody know we're on. Drop an email to them, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Blessings. Bye-bye.